In this video, you'll learn how to approach a new supplier as a brand new store owner, whether you're dropshipping, selling wholesale, or private labeling. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and be sure to hit the bell button to be notified when new videos come out. Now picture this scenario. You've put together a list of potential vendors that you want to work with, either from a trade show or from a manufacturer's distributor's list. You've never purchased in bulk before. You don't have a website or a domain, and you are extremely apprehensive about contacting your suppliers for the very first time. So what do? You stall. A voice inside your head tells you, maybe I should put up a website first. Maybe I should start a corporation or an LLC. Maybe I need business cards. But in reality, you should be figuring out what you want to sell and nailing down your product sourcing strategy as soon as you can. Now, recently, I received an email from one of my readers who was a bit apprehensive about contacting their first supplier. How do I approach my supplier, and what kind of opening letter email should I write? Should I have decided on a company name and have my website up and running before I make contact with my supplier? And how do I deal with this question? How long have you been in business for? So I was hoping you could shed some light on the matter, and whether you have any sample emails or letters you might have used in the beginning when first making contact with your potential new supplier. Now, before you do anything, you have to choose a sourcing strategy first. So first off, the way you approach your vendor will depend on whether you dropship, whether you buy wholesale, or whether you want to private label your own products from Asia. All of these models require a slightly different game plan. So if you haven't chosen your e-commerce business model yet, or if you're not 100% sure which product sourcing strategy to go with, watch this video first where I outline and compare 8 different e-commerce business models. So bottom line, approaching a vendor for dropshipping is a lot different than buying wholesale and carrying your own inventory. Similarly, importing goods from overseas and dealing with Asian vendors requires a different strategy as well. But don't worry, I'm going to break all of them down for you in this video. So here's how to approach wholesalers in the US or in your own country. Now, when it comes to sourcing products for your own online store, buying your goods wholesale in your own country is by far the easiest way to go. There are very few requirements, and most suppliers will be willing to work with you no matter what level you are at. And in the US, for example, all you need is a seller's permit or a business license, and you're good to go. You don't need a website. You don't need to have a corporation or an LLC. You can simply call or email the wholesaler, tell them that you'd like to carry their goods, and ask them how to make a purchase. Now, if you're in the US, they'll probably ask you for your seller's permit for tax purposes and tell you their minimum order requirements. But that's it. Some vendors won't even ask you for your seller's permit, but having one allows you to purchase your supplies tax-free. It also demonstrates to your vendor that you actually have or are trying to start a real business. In addition, it's actually required by law to have a seller's permit before you start selling online because you need to pay sales tax in your state. Now, in my experience, most wholesale vendors in the US have very reasonable purchase minimums on the order of hundreds of dollars, so your upfront costs won't be too bad. So overall, going the wholesale route is super easy. Because you are buying the product outright, the vendor generally won't care whether you're an established business or not because they get paid no matter what. And once you've established a track record of consistent orders, you can ask for net 30 payment terms. Net 30 is a form of trade credit, which allows you to pay for your goods up to 30 days later to help with your cash flow. Now, how do you approach vendors for dropshipping? Now, while buying wholesale products is super simple, getting a vendor to dropship for you is a different beast. Why? It's because when you buy wholesale, the transaction is simple. You pay the vendor and the supplier sends you the goods. But when it comes to dropshipping, you are essentially asking for a partnership. And instead of buying products in bulk, your vendor will be fulfilling every order that you send to them individually. In addition, you will have to work with them closely to make sure that the packaging and inserts display your brand as opposed to theirs. So in short, the commitment that a dropship vendor must make is much larger than a simple wholesale arrangement. So here are the dropship vendor requirements. You need to be fully prepared before contacting a dropship vendor because you must come across as a legit business. Not only do you need to have your seller's permit ready to go, but I would also put up a professional looking website ahead of time. But wait, Steve, how can I put up a website before I have anything to sell? Well, just because you have a website doesn't mean that it actually has to accept transactions. Just because you have a website doesn't mean that it needs to be fully functional. Now, if I were approaching a dropship vendor, I would put up a quick and dirty website using Shopify or BigCommerce or Ship4Shop using stock product images and make it look like a real live shop. Remember, you're asking your dropship vendor to become a partner, and they will not want to partner with you unless you can prove to them that you have a plan to drive sales. Now, is putting up a website explicitly necessary? No, but having a great looking website will go a long way in convincing a vendor that you are worthy of their time. The choice is yours. Now, once you've shown your dropship supplier that you mean business, you need to perform your own due diligence as well. So here are just some questions to ask. Is there a dropship fee? Oftentimes, dropship vendors will charge a per order fee for fulfillment. How long does it take to ship product once an order has been placed? Customer service is always a major concern when dropshipping. How are orders placed? Phone, fax, email, API direct from your shopping cart? Do they support EDI? EDI is a way to get real-time inventory data from your supplier so you don't sell goods that are out of stock. How are orders tracked? Will they send shipping and tracking information directly to the customer? And can you place my company name and logo on the package? It's important that you use your own brand on the packaging. Now here's how to approach vendors from China and overseas countries. Now if you want to sell private label products online, or if you want to sell your own branded products, the best way to proceed is to have your goods manufactured overseas. Now this is not as intimidating as it sounds, but dealing with Chinese suppliers is a lot different than dealing with suppliers in the United States. So first off, they don't care the slightest bit about permits or certificates. So you don't need to have a seller's permit, you don't need to have a corporation or an LLC, you don't need to have a website or anything at all. The only thing that an Asian supplier cares about is whether you can purchase a product in volume and on a consistent basis. As a result, you need to come across as someone who has purchasing power when you first contact them. So here are a couple of rules of engagement that I always follow. Never contact them as the boss or the owner. Instead, pretend that you're a buyer or a subordinate for your company. Never tell them that you don't know what you're doing. Instead, project confidence in your emails and your correspondence. Do not ask stupid questions that could easily be looked up with a simple Google search. Never tell them that you're just getting started. If they ask for your website and you don't have one, tell them you primarily sell your goods in retail stores or small kiosks. Never show them an incomplete website. There's no real point in showing off your website if it's not ready. If you tell your supplier about your website and it's empty or incomplete, they may not take you seriously. Now the key is confidence. You have to be decisive, know what you want, and convey to the supplier that you would like to feature their products for your business. If they think you're just a newbie, they will not reply to you or give you the time of day. And in some cases, they may even give you inflated prices so that you'll just go away. Make sure you ask about minimum order quantities. Now, assuming your vendor carries the items that you want to sell, I usually try to address the minimum purchase or MOQ question first. Now, before you initiate contact, you should have an idea of how much you're willing to buy and how often. Now, while this is a difficult question to answer if you don't have any customers, the reality is that you need to make an educated guess and not be wishy-washy about it. Make sure you get this out of the way first. One time, my wife and I spent a couple hours talking to a supplier only to discover at the end that their minimum purchase was $50,000 worth of merchandise, which was well beyond our means. Now, there are different suppliers and distributors that deal with different classes of customers. So make sure that you're dealing with the right one that fits your business. So usually, I'll bring up the minimum order quantity question in a very subtle manner. So for example, I might ask, please give me a quote for this product in 500, 1,000, 5,000, and 10,000 unit quantities. Now, if the supplier is way beyond your league, they'll tell you. But if the supplier is within range, you won't come across as a newbie for asking this question. Now, once you determine that your purchasing power is a match, you should always ask for samples to evaluate product quality. And if the samples check out, here are some other questions that we ask. What are the lead times for manufacturing? Typical lead times will usually be on the order of months. What are your payment terms? How much payment is required up front? Usually you have to put 30% down and pay the remaining upon completion. How long have you been in business? You generally don't want to work with brand new factories. How large is your facility? Sometimes I'll ask for a video tour of the factory floor. What other related products do you manufacture? If they sell a bunch of disparate items, that's generally a bad sign that they're not really a factory. Who are some of your existing customers in the US? I prefer suppliers who are used to working with Western countries. Now here's what you need to remember. Different suppliers cater to different business sizes. So if you're having problems finding a Chinese supplier that matches your minimum order requirements, don't get discouraged. Every successful business has to start from somewhere. But the important thing to realize is that there are a wide variety of vendors who cater to different classes of customers. And it's essential to figure out if you and your vendor are a good match upfront so you don't waste any time. So for example, for our wedding linen store, we are still considered a small fry when it comes to our purchasing volume, so it wouldn't make sense for us to contact a large linen manufacturer directly. Now, when I contact a vendor for the first time, I always start with email and transition over to WeChat. If possible, I try to arrange a face-to-face meeting by actually traveling to China. Now, this is recommended but not required. And when I send email, I don't use a standard form letter or template because I purposely write my correspondence in a more personal tone. Remember, you are dealing with real people here and you are trying to develop a relationship. I try to treat all my suppliers like I would treat an old friend or coworker. Now, here's a secret on how to get a supplier to give you the time of day. Now, in the beginning, my wife and I had a lot of problems contacting suppliers because we didn't understand their needs. In order to be successful, you have to put yourself in their shoes. If you are dealing with a wholesale distributor, their primary need is to get paid for their products. There's very little upfront commitment. If you are dealing with a dropshipper, their primary need is to work with a store that can drive consistent sales. There's a much larger upfront commitment to set up and maintain a dropshipping account, and the hassle of shipping individual orders must be worth their time. And if you are dealing with a Chinese supplier, they have limited factory capacity, so they need to work with someone who can provide consistent sales at higher volumes. So before you approach any supplier, make sure you have a strategy in place that caters to their needs as well as your own. And don't forget that your suppliers are trying to make a profit as well. The best arrangements are ones where you and your supplier can both make money and share a mutual interest. Now, when we first started out, we used to try and extract the lowest possible price out of our suppliers, but what we found was that this tactic generally pissed them off. Once we started getting a little more creative with our deals, our relationships with our suppliers became much better. So for example, instead of trying to negotiate an absolute price up front, we agreed on a pricing structure based on volume of sales. And remember, you got to put yourself in their shoes. The first thing that I always tell my students when sourcing product is to put yourself in the shoes of your supplier or distributor. Now, in the grand scheme of things, suppliers are just like online store owners in that they want to make money by selling products. But the only difference is that they need to move product in much higher volume. Now, as an online store owner that caters to the general consumer, it's fine for you to sell items individually. But a wholesale supplier typically needs to move product in much greater bulk because they have higher overhead and inventory storage costs to deal with. And that is why distributors need to pick their clients extremely carefully. Every store that they work with requires a certain level of time and commitment. So it is in their best interest to only work with stores that can consistently bring in revenue and have the best chance of becoming a long-term customer. Now, distributors come in all shapes and sizes, and in order to be successful, you have to find the right supplier that is willing to sell you the right quantity of product. And the first impression you give to your supplier can make all the difference. Hope you enjoyed this video. Now, if you like what you saw, there's actually a lot more where that came from if you subscribe to my channel below. And if you are interested in learning how to sell physical products online, then click over here and take my free 6-day mini course where I'll walk you through everything that you need to know to get started in e-commerce. Thanks for watching.